It's, especially in the era of AI, which I definitely, I use AI, but I know that you also, I use it for productivity and things like that. And I wish more people understood, when you use AI for everything, you just become like your voice doesn't stand out. It no longer is the human side. It's not you. It's not who you really are. Like you've basically put on a costume. And that doesn't stand out, not especially in today's time where people are craving human connection, they are craving community, and they are craving authenticity. And that is why, finding your real voice, finding what works for you, and letting the world see who you really are, whether if that is.
Your business's success depends on relationships. Relationships with customers, relationships with employees, and relationships with stakeholders. What do they all have in common? They're all human. Because no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Welcome to the Human Connection Podcast. I'm your host, Karl Ponto. Each week, I'll bring you stories, insights, and practical advice from experts that you can apply to your growing company and daily life. This week, I'm excited to connect with Briana Brugh. She is a professional yapper with a decade of marketing experience under her belt, and she also loves all things Nicolas Cage and yapping. Congrats on the yapping, and welcome to the Human Connection Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Karl.
So, as a lot of listeners and viewers are probably wondering what exactly yapping means, but I think it's important to understand what yapping is and how that different approach to marketing that you use is such a valuable thing in today's world where there's so much noise and so much people are doing the same sort of playbooks and everything kind of blends together without taking the extra effort to do something distinctive. So I'd love to hear your take on how you approach marketing and helping your clients stand out in the noisy market.
Yeah. I have been in marketing for over a decade, and I've worked across almost every industry. And something that was a common factor with a lot of the work that I did is that so many clients weren't willing to risk standing out in their industries. And when that happens, it's like you just become, another pawn on the chessboard, and you're going to get knocked off by somebody else who is willing to risk it. And about a year and a half ago, I decided to stand out and get out of my shell where, anyone who's a marketer or has worked in social media, 9 times out of 10, we don't have our own social media presence because we know how much time and effort that takes. But I was like, okay, with the rise of AI, with, marketing and creative starting to take a hit, I was like, you're easily replaceable. And it's about having your own visible real estate now in a very noisy market, because if your voice isn't heard, again, you have no seat at a table, And I decided to do something different where on LinkedIn, we were in that era for the longest time of thought leadership, of this is the style content. You have to be buttoned up. You have to be polished here. But one of my favorite industries that I have worked in for a really long time is CPG, which is consumer packaged goods. That is your D2C brands that, food, beverage, snacks, household items, anything that you need to constantly purchase. And they really started showing up on LinkedIn, some of the bigger brands with humor. And I was like, oh, this is really interesting. Like, people are responding really well to this. And this is more of my vibe. Like, comedy has always been my outlet. Like, that's always what's got me through. Like, as humans, we all have our own obstacles, our own challenges, our own things that we're balancing. And I was like, the humor really adds that human element that in marketing that I think that so many brands have missed, where, consumers and users and subscribers and your community, your audience, everybody's looking for relatability, and they're looking to laugh, especially in a timeline where the world feels like it's on fire. So I was like, let's light it up. Let's have some fun here. Let's strip it down, because if these brands are successful, across TikTok, across Instagram, across Facebook. Like, why can't we use that same humor on LinkedIn? And I decided to go against all of the rules. And I was like, I'm not going to talk about marketing and why you need to invest in building organic and why you need to build communities. And I'm not going to talk about the typical stuff. I'm going to do storytelling through humor. So I started talking about, and I called it yapping, because again, if everybody is saying that they're a marketer, how am I going to stand out through the noise? I'm going to say that I'm yapping. I'm not a marketer anymore. I'm a yapper. So I didn't invent the word, and I certainly didn't, it's now obviously completely associated with me and my brand, but I just took something and I ran with it and was like, I'd rather be identified as a yapper because, one, that's who I am. And I just took down everything that I was doing before. I had around 2,000 followers at the time. I'd been on LinkedIn for 10 years. Like, nothing had ever really happened. But when I started yapping about Hamburger Helper and Nicolas Cage and nostalgia and 90s moments and all these other weird things that people typically didn't see in content across the platform, magic happened. And I broke through the noise. I broke through the barrier, which I think is what everyone needs to find a way to do for whatever they're doing, whatever industry, whatever category you're in. And one of the brands that I have a history with and that inspired me to really like release that inner like feral persona that is who I am was Dude Wipes, because their story really inspired me when I was like, okay, this is a brand new, like, they've been around for over 10 years now, but a brand new product at the time that came in and secured 1% of an industry that has been dominated by toilet paper brands for decades. And they did it by being different. They did it by finding an angle that nobody was looking at, and they took that angle and they ran with it, which was potty humor. And it has been some of the funniest stuff. They are one of my favorite brands because they're one of the ones that are ready to risk it to get the biscuit. They're willing to be funny and stand out in the noise. And I was like, okay, that's what I'd rather do than, again, if the polished, clean, like buttoned up thought leadership is your vibe, that's great. It was never mine. It was never what was going to work for me. And that wasn't who I was at the core. So when I released that like other side and I just started yapping, again, the craziest things happened where I found myself in a community who, these people started asking like, where can I read more of your writing? And that led to me developing a newsletter, and that newsletter evolved into the website, which evolved into a full-blown media company. And so I really think it's important for people to find, what's authentic to them and what works for them, and just start yapping. The world needs more yappers. And, like, every time I hear somebody say, well, there's just so much noise already on social media, it's like, yeah, and we always need more, because every time you're not yapping about something fun or humorous or good in the world, that's leaving a seat at the table for somebody who's going to come in and use social media for the wrong reasons.
So I really like what you were saying about how you're started showing up as yourself and thinking about it as yapping, and really finding this community of people that were looking for something that was different than the status quo. Because yeah, things are noisy, but that's actually an opportunity when you look at it the right way, because everyone's so used to the noise. If you can kind of approach it in a different way that is on a different frequency, then that noise becomes a huge contrasting background for you to stand out even more. And so when you're approaching the marketing and adding that humor element to it as well, I think is really great, because humor is such a human thing, and a way that we build more of these connections and trust between people. And I think there's, like I said, I totally agree that when things are stressful and overwhelming and crazy like they are, being able to laugh and release that pressure and connect with people around you with a Like we're all in on the joke. Stuff is more powerful than ever. And it's something that when you're trying to build trust with people as a brand, as a business, having more human aspects to your content is going to be better than if you come across as just another faceless, over polished, professional, quote unquote, entity that doesn't really have any humanity in them.
100%. It's, you know, especially in the era of AI, which I definitely, I use AI, but I know that you also, you know, I use it for productivity and things like that. And I wish more people understood, you know, when you use AI for everything, you just become like your voice doesn't stand out. It no longer is the human side. It's not you. It's not who you really are. Like you've basically put on a costume. And that doesn't stand out, not especially in today's time where people are craving human connection, they are craving community, and they are craving authenticity. And that is why, you know, finding your real voice, finding what works for you, and letting the world see who you really are. Whether if that is, you know, an empathetic, kind person who just posts inspiring stuff or motivational stuff, or somebody who uses humor, or somebody who, there's so many ways to go about this. And it's still about like finding your voice, finding your lane, and just honing in on that and watching the magic happen. Because again, I've been like screaming into the void on LinkedIn for years. Nothing worked. Like nothing happened. I was like, okay, this is not who I am at the end of the day. So we're just going to stop, because that none of this works anymore. You know, maybe 10 years ago, thought leadership was cool, but it's like, okay, we all don't, not everybody falls into that bucket. I don't want to talk about these things. I want to share stories. I want to make people laugh. I want to be an outlet where, like I said earlier, the world's on fire. And if I've at least made, you know, one person laugh today, then great. The world feels a little lighter right now. But I think in marketing, it goes such a longer way for you to have a voice that it's the amount of times I get tagged now in ads or commercials or, you know, campaigns where it's like, were you behind this? Because the voices sound exactly like mine. And I'm like, that shows me right there that my voice is standing out in a crowded room. You know, in saturated markets, people look at something and when they're laughing, they're like, oh my God, there's one person that's got to be behind this. 9 times out of 10, I was not even involved. But it's because I've created such a unique voice that people think about it when I'm not even in the room. And that's the power of, you know, being authentic and building the right community and using all the marketing strategies to connect all the dots so that you do stand out in a saturated market, which goes back to the whole point of like why I called myself a yapper. Everybody on LinkedIn, like everybody knows marketing is one of the most saturated industries to work in. Everybody's a marketer, and there's 20,000 degrees of marketing. So it's like, are you an email marketer? Are you a digital marketer? Are you SEO? Are you paid? Like what kind? And it's like, I've done everything. So I didn't want to say that because most people know well enough. The reality is if you don't work for a global company, nobody cares. You don't have street cred, you know? And I was like, okay, how am I going to stand out if I've never worked for a global company? And at first I just changed my headlines. I was like, I'm not going to put anything real up there because does anybody read these? And so I started putting professional yapper and LinkedIn comedian and LinkedIn bottom voice. And, you know, instead of saying thought leadership, I was like, I post thought leadership. And I got very creative. The amount of responses that I got just on that alone was like, okay, this is your lane. Like you have something here where you're making people feel an emotion, whether that's laughing or whatever. Like you're able to invoke emotion through this. And that really gave me the confidence to like embrace who I really was at the end of the day. And there's been so many beautiful things that have happened because of that, not just like building a brand and like all of that stuff, but the friendships I've made, the community that I have now. Like get texts from LinkedIn friends all the time that just want to check in. And it's amazing what just yapping on the internet has led to.
Yeah, I think it's something that mindset shift for any marketer is one that is going to be beneficial. But it's trickier if they're inside of a larger company. Obviously, there's already a lot of issues, and I've seen people talk about this, or people that are not in the marketing space think they'll give input on marketing. I think they know what's going on and get suggestions, and it's like most of the time it's terrible because they don't really know how to market, but everyone kind of thinks they do, and it's very undervalued. So I think there's a lot of challenges for marketers that are in larger organizations that have to get a lot of things approved and stuff to push for the move towards the way you approach marketing. So which is unfortunate, but also means that a lot of the smaller, scrappier like startups that have less entrenched ways of doing things have an even bigger opportunity to market themselves differently and with humor and with humanity and grab more of that market share, like you're talking about with dude wipes, that maybe even in an industry that seems like it's completely red ocean, so to speak, you can find traction where it wouldn't exist otherwise because you're able to market in a way that the more established competitors are too afraid to, or that even if the marketers in those teams recognize the value in doing things differently, the people that are actually giving the final approval for these are never going to be able to want to take that risk because they're so risk averse. Everyone is so risk averse these days, and it ends up killing their chances for real success of actually making bigger moves because they're so worried about giving up what they already have. But the stagnation leads to a slow, painful decay rather than something that's like quick and like, even if like it doesn't quite work, you can still rebound and adapt to it, but just that slow decay of quality and brand recognition and like results is what so many businesses are stuck in, and they've gotten so big that it takes a while for it all to fall apart. But it seems like there's a lot of existing brands out there whose their kind of relationships and the quality of the products and just the whole thing is kind of just slowly eroding because of this fear of doing things differently.
100%. I see brands die every day, and it's tragic. It really hurts my soul to see them fade away and not become what they could potentially become or what their potential even was, because the reality is I've worked for so many founders who, before I got in the door, I heard all the things I wanted to hear. We want to be irreverent. We want to be funny. We want to risk it. And then you get in the door and it's like, oh, we actually don't want to do any of that. And it's like, wait a minute, what? And it completely kills the creativity. Sometimes it's egos. Sometimes it's them not understanding and thinking like the safe lane is the way to go. But with the experience I've had and all the things that I've been to, conference shows, and I've met, for example, in the CPG industry, I've met retailers and press who go to these conferences and they're like, we're not even looking for, the products here at the show. We're just looking to meet with the brands who've stood out and made noise on social media. And it's like, if you think that making noise isn't going to equate to something good for you, then spoiler alert, your brand's probably going to die. And that's the reality. If you're not willing to stand out in your category, you can bet your competitor is. And, 5 years from now, nobody's going to know who your brand even was, because there are like every category for anything. It doesn't matter if it's SaaS, if it's retail, if it's government or CPG, whatever it is, beauty, fitness, you could really like go down to every niche. Every category is saturated. There are probably, pulling this number out of thin air, so it's not exact, but there could be like 5,000 new brands being created every single day that you have to now compete with for a spot. And the reality is, it's like most of them, it really takes like about 5 years to take off. And if you're not investing in a community and you're not investing in really setting your brand to stand out, it's not going to be around for the long run. So this is no more about like, oh, you got to play on social media, or like, it really is about, you know, becoming seen in a world that is continuing to just be noise.
Yeah, love it. Well, thank you so much for connecting with me today, Briana. If you enjoyed this episode of the Human Connection Podcast, please like, leave a comment, and subscribe. If you want to learn more about myself or Briana, check out the links in the show notes. And remember, no matter if your business is B2B or B2C, it's really H to H, human to human. Happy connecting.